this film actually shows the despicable lengths some of these debt collectors go to, especially, you know, to get money out of people that are really struggling. What was it after reading the script? I mean, why would you say, I want to play this character?
Yeah, so it's definitely a good question. I think, you know, when you're an actor, you can be self-indulgent and kind of like look for characters and kind of like have that thing that kind of sparks you. But then there's also another element of like diving into something and kind of understanding a world, and what better to understand a world, which at the end of the day is the reason why I wanted to become an actor, is because I wanted to learn and kind of research and experience. What better way than to actually go and be on the other side of things where the things are ugly. And I hadn't read a script about debt collection, and at the end of the day, it wasn't about debt collection. It's a story about a man understanding the environment that he's created for himself, then falling in love, and then coming to an awareness that the world that he set for himself in the environment is very poisonous, and he's been ignorant to that. And that duality, that him trying to escape from that world, is a lot harder than he thought, you know, closing that chapter. And so that was what was interesting for me. And yeah, I mean, it was definitely a hard feat, you know, to come to this realization that, you know, we do live in a world that people do struggle a lot. There is a lot of suffering in the world, and especially after, you know, the last 2 years we've had, this movie kind of is even more relevant. So yeah, I think it, to answer your question, it did help me in the middle of the film when this man, Brandon, the character, falls in love and kind of has this opportunity for a new beginning, to view this life that he's set up in a despicable way, you know. Yeah.
I mean, you've also got a producer credit on this, an executive producer credit. How much of a say do you get of how you want it to, your character to go, or how much input into the story do you get?
My company actually, it was actually the first movie that my company produced, Dark Dreams Entertainment. And on that movie, you know, sometimes you take the role of producer hat for creative, and sometimes you take it for the financial, you know, putting the movie together and kind of more from a business perspective. And for me on this, it was purely creative, and to step on board and kind of support Marianna in her vision. But I really view being a producer on the movie as bringing a collective group together and working as a team. You know, when you're just an actor on a film, a lot of people, especially myself in the past, have only looked from a single narrative point of view, a single narrative perspective. You're not looking at the movie as a whole. And when you're a producer, and I only had this experience when I directed a movie in 2017 called Backroads, you're looking at the movie as a whole and collectively coming together to collaborate. And I really loved the environment of collaboration. And so coming onto this movie, it was just to have more of a collaborative experience and less just an acting experience. And I really enjoy producing. But when you're working with someone like Marianna, and who has a very specific ideology of what they want, you know, there's not really much to do because you're following her lead. She's the captain of the ship, you know.
Yeah. So going back to you mentioned about doing research for the character. Exactly how far into your research did you have to go? Did you contact any debt collectors, or, you know, go to, obviously he has his own personal grief as well.
Yeah.
Maybe go to like those grieving, what would you call them, meetings and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, the writer is actually a defense attorney or a defense lawyer who has dealt with a lot of these cases. And so I sat with him for a long period of time and kind of picked his brain on, I didn't really want to, I've been on the other side of the gate, where I've had my car in London as a young boy being towed by a private tow company, and they wanting to extort you for £400, and you're like 17 years of age, and like, if you don't pick it up that week, it goes to £800, and it's on private property. So you can't. I've been in the other position, I've been in that uncomfortable position. And, in America, changing addresses, you miss a bill's being sent to your previous address, it affects your score or credit rating. And so, which then affects you if you want to get a mortgage. And it's just, there's trickle effects. And I've been on that other side, like a lot of people have. And so as far as grief, the character with grief, obviously I have my own personal experiences that I draw upon, but as far as the research into the debt collection and that atmosphere, that was really created by Marianna and created by Todd in the writing. There wasn't much research to go on, not research, not much practical research to go on, due to complications. I was already on another film, and I had not as much time preparation that I wish I could have had.
I thought you might say that the debt collectors didn't want you to see behind the scenes what they really get up to.
Well, I in all honesty, I never like to, I did speak to a couple of people on the phone, a couple of debt collectors, and, you can't show someone the reality when they have a distorted reality. When you're talking to people, it's like the character that I'm playing. They have a view, and there are contracts out there, and you didn't pay your bills, and we've bought those contracts, and we're making you aware of them. And how people go about that is up to their own demise, and that's their own moral compass. And if you're sitting there with the moral compass finger, we'll be sitting in the world pointing fingers as we are all day, and so I didn't want to get too involved in that. I know what that is, and it's an interesting subject.
And then I mentioned before about his own personal grief. He with meeting the stripper, I've forgotten her name now. I only watched the film last night. Because that's it. He's obviously, his views and his priorities changed. Do you think, was that kind of a harder step to make that transference from someone who's a very nasty character like his best friend and partner into being someone that's just wants to forget about that and move on?
Are you asking what it was like for me to change the mindset of the character in that moment? I also struggled with that on the set. I said there's not enough evolution of this, for him to have a come to Jesus moment, essentially. And Marianna has a great way of kind of guiding you. And she said, have you ever had a take your breath away moment? And I said, yeah. And in that moment, that's all you've thought about, and that's all that has brought you happiness, whatever it is. Love for a sport, love for a woman, love for a man, love for a dog, love for anything with love. And I said, yeah, of course I have. And she said, well, in that moment of that purity and that love, that wholeness, that one, that's all you can think about. And through the evolution of that love, if it's pure love, you have realizations because you're coming from a pure intention, and so you are having that moment where you are having this purity and this pure love, which is like the light, and you can have a dark room and you put a candle in it and it lights up the room. And so you are at the dark room and she is your candle. And I was like, you're right. Okay. And I didn't have, and that's why it's so amazing to work with someone, you know, like Marianna, because she brings a sensibility and an emotion that maybe some other people wouldn't have. I certainly didn't have that view. And that really helped my character to kind of have that switch where he's kind of in those scenes having self-discovery of like, oh, I've really, this environment, this atmosphere that is around me is horrible, you know.
There's one scene I want to ask you about, actually, because it looked quite painful, and I'm not going to say who it was, but you go head to head with your partner and best mate, who's played by Mike Vogel, and one of you gets slammed into the table. That looked like it really hurt. Was that a stunt double, or was it, you know, you actually doing it?
Mike practices Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and so do I. And so we did the stunt, but we have pads in the back, and Mike is super strong, and like he's super fit. So when he's lifting me and pushing me down, he's also holding me. So like before I slam, he's like lifting up a little bit. So I'm not really hitting the table that hard.
It's your fake like wrestling, damn it.
Yeah. No, he's a great partner, great scene partner.
Okay, and finally, like you mentioned Backroads earlier on. Do you have any plans to return behind the camera, or which is your preferred location, in front or behind?
I love both. I love making movies. I love producing. I love directing. I love acting. I just, it's so hard to make a movie, you know, to get it off the ground, to get everyone to come together. And you're not dealing with corporate, you're dealing with creative, which a lot of people have their idiosyncrasies, you know. So to make a movie is a miracle, and I just love making films. And I hope to return behind the camera at some point. I did find a project, or I did find two projects that I really thought I was going to go and direct, and one of them was a really interesting subject. It was about the uprise of the Sun, you know, newspaper, and like it was also set in the 70s, and it's kind of like spotlight a little bit, kind of serious subject matter, and how they came to become the most infamous and best. What's that?
Corrupt newspaper.
Well, that's, yeah, I mean, I'm not talking about the 2000s, I'm talking about when it first started, you know, and how, you know, they became the #1 read newspaper. And it was based off a play that I was staying in the St. Martin's Lane Hotel, and I just came out one Friday night, and kind of like, I wasn't working till Monday, and I saw the play literally at St. Martin's Lane, and I walked over and sat and watched it on my own, and kind of tried to option the script, and I did get it, and then someone else came under, a much more established person came under and took the rights. And then the other film, unfortunately, it was just a bigger film that you know, we live in a economy that you have to have, you know, these conglomerate stars that are signed up for like 10 years to these projects. So unfortunately, I couldn't get that off the ground. But you know, I have a couple of films that I think, you know, I think probably the tail end of next year I'll direct something. I've got a couple of things, and you know, I'm not precious about my follow-up to Backroads. I just love creating, but I definitely want to make something that's you know, I'm very much about making films that are for the audience, you know. And you know, I've done something that's kind of dark, and there's something that maybe I'm going to try, maybe I'll fail horribly, but I've found a kind of like a dark comedy, a little bit in the vein of Bad Santa, which I think I'm going to take a crack at.
Oh, I look forward to seeing that.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak to me today.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.
Hey,